Welcome everyone to the podcast. My name is Enrique Guzman-Barron, and today we are diving into a conversation that I think so is going to hit very close to home for a lot of people. The title of the episode is Stop Paying with Your Life, Richard Lee on Identity, Time, and Transformation. Because whether we realize it or not, every single day we are making trades. We trade time for comfort, we trade potential for safety, and sometimes we don't even realize the price we're paying until years have gone by. Today's guest, Richard Lee, is someone who has lived that reality and, more important, has turned into a framework to help others transform their life from the inside out. Richard is a psychological trainer and identity coach who helps people rewire how they see themselves because, as he says it, you don't change your life by changing your habits, you change it by changing your identity. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Enrique. I'm glad to be here.
So, Richard, I want to start with something you say that really stood out to me. You talk about how people are paying with their life using the wrong currency. What do you mean by that?
So I think people place a huge amount of value on money. Oftentimes, I remember for me, I used to think, hey, you know what? I'm going to put this off. I won't invest into the gym. I won't invest into this course or this mastermind or this book or going to school, or always kind of holding on to money really tight. And what I didn't realize at the time was that I was going to pay a price one way or the other. Now, the unfortunate part was that I didn't understand that there was another price to pay. And what I did pay with was my time, heartbreak, broken relationships, unhealthy body, broken spiritually. And there's so many prices that we don't realize that just because we don't pay with money, it doesn't mean we're not paying a price. We're going to learn the lesson one way or the other. And then the sad part is that if you choose not to pay with money to learn the lesson faster, you're going to end up paying more money in the long run anyway. So either way, the money is being spent. And so I learned a very difficult lesson. It took like 10 years to learn this lesson that, you know what, I should have just spent the money, bit the bullet, ate a little bit cheaper and just put that money towards my learning so that I could get the lessons faster, because it would have been much cheaper than paying with my time and my relationships and my, suffering, essentially.
Very nice. You also have a perspective that I think so is going to challenge a lot of people. You say that most people don't actually need more therapy, they need better skills and achieving identity. That is a bold statement. Can you unpack that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I personally have a little bit of a problem with therapy, psychologists and psychiatrists in the traditional sense, because it's a lot of diagnosing and there's not a lot of solution. And from my perspective, it's over-diagnosing to the point where, look, I don't discredit if you have some type of diagnosis. I'm sure, ADHD, bipolar disorder, any of these disorders, I don't discount it. But what I have a problem with, it's similar to Alcoholics Anonymous. At the beginning of Alcoholics Anonymous, they make you do one thing which I think is incredibly destructive. They say, hey, my name is Richard and I am an alcoholic, or I'm a drug addict. And that may seem, at first glance, it may seem like it's a good thing to admit that you have a problem, but you're not admitting that you have a problem. You are admitting that you are the problem. And that's what I have a problem with, is that as human beings, I've been coaching for a long time for free as a volunteer at my friend's leadership development company. He's been a mentor of mine. He's kind of taken me under his wing and taught me a lot before I finally now started branching off. And having been with so many people, I've learned one thing, is that human beings are so much more than their patterns. If you're struggling with alcoholism or drug addiction or even porn addiction or anything like that, any type of addiction, I would challenge you to really think, are you really addicted? And the litmus test that I always ask people is this: would you be willing to sell your daughter, your wife, your mother, your sister in exchange for whatever you claim to be addicted for? And most people, the vast majority, I haven't come across anybody that would say yes, because that's what addicts do. If you're truly addicted, you'll sell anything to get your fix. And so being able to just break that belief right off the bat with that comparison, people begin to realize, oh, so there's a big difference between saying I am an alcoholic versus I abuse alcohol. You can tell the truth without associating it into your identity, because the strongest force in our psychology is our need to be consistent with how we define ourselves. And so the challenge that a lot of people face is that they define themselves as I am angry, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I'm ADHD, I'm bipolar. And it's just not true. You have those conditions or you have those behaviors or those beliefs or those feelings, but that's not who you are. You're so much more than that.
Nice. Let's go back to the beginning for a moment. What was home like for you growing up?
Yeah, home growing up for me, I grew up with a violent father. He abused my mother physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. He was a very broken and hurt man. And I grew up with a lot of fear. I remember the dominant emotion I would feel as a little boy. It was fear, fear from my mother, and feeling really helpless because I couldn't do anything about it. I mean, I'm not a very tall man. My dad is fairly tall. He's 5'11", which is pretty tall for an Asian guy, right? Unfortunately, I just felt incredibly hopeless and powerless and fearful growing up all the way. And I grew up with one day, I was 16 years old. I was at church, and the priest said something that I'll never forget. He said, "The best thing that a father can do for his kids is to love their mother." And I remember breaking down in tears at church hearing that because I wished so badly that that was the situation in my house. But the blessing that I didn't realize I had from having a father like this was that it developed an obsession in me to answer one question. Why do people do what they do? And really, what I wanted to know more than anything is why was my father doing what he did? That's really what I wanted to know. But I generalized it and I became obsessed with understanding what makes us tick, what makes us behave the way that we do. Why is it that sometimes we know we need to be doing things and we don't do them? Or why is it that we know we shouldn't be doing things and we do them? What is that thing? Because I think we think that we're really logical, but if you observe human behavior, there's so much illogical behavior. Most of our behavior is illogical. Otherwise, we wouldn't drink, we wouldn't smoke, we wouldn't do a lot of these things that are really not logical. There's no benefit to it. So, growing up in this environment in a violent home where and there was also a lot of demand and expectation of me. He demanded that I be an athlete, he demanded that I be a student. He demanded a lot out of me. He had a lot of expectation. He pushed me every day. I remember growing up, I used to play baseball, and it wasn't like the cute, like, oh, he's got his uniform, he's going to eat his snacks. No, it was 2-a-day practices every day. He just really kind of drilled that discipline, which, looking back now, I appreciate, but at the time, it was just constant fear, constant stress. And it really just forced this really obsession that I can't seem to put out, which is I yearn to understand human behavior and gotten to a point where now I feel like I have some answers to share with people.
So you have said that your environment made you a student of human behavior very early on. Where did that obsession with psychology and influence really come from?
I think it really came from the pain, first from my father, growing up, again, abusing my mother, and then growing up as a, 15, 16, 17-year-old boy wanting to learn how to talk to women. And I remember there was an obsession with not wanting to be like my dad. So the first girl I dated, I tried to be everything opposite. I tried to be the nicest guy and do everything that she wanted. And it was just really a lot of mistakes. Not that women shouldn't be treated nice. It was just that the way that I was going about it wasn't very effective, and I got my heart broken. And then I made this generalization in my mind that I guess being nice is um, not the route. Like I was nice to this girl. Why didn't she like me? Why didn't she love me? What is it that drives human behavior? So it was just a series of painful experiences in my life that it just confused me because it was counterintuitive. That's why recently I came up with the statement, you'll begin to understand human behavior if you stop expecting them to behave logically. And that really just came from a series of pain. Growing up later on, I was 21 years old. I confided in a man who's 35 years old. I looked at him like a brother, and he was a successful laboratory owner in the past, and I thought he was a successful business owner still. And I was in business, and our businesses were related. And he took me under his wing as kind of like he wanted to be my mentor. But everything that he said turned out to be false. He tricked me into investing with him $17,000. And for 6 months, he strung me along, pretending that it was coming, that it was coming, that it was coming. And every time he said that the money was going to be even more and more and more. By the end of the 6 months, he was promising $1 million payout. And finally, his wife sat me down with her father in law to tell me, hey, we just found out. I saw his phone. He's been lying to you. This isn't the first time he's done this. He spent all that money on prostitutes. And that was another third pivotal moment in my life. My father, my first girlfriend, and this mentor, older brother figure that I experienced a tremendous amount of pain. I felt betrayed. I felt stupid. I remember asking myself, how stupid could he think I was to trick me for 6 months? And all that pain really kind of fueled this question like, why is it that people do what they do? I felt like I was doing everything right. I felt like I was doing right by these people, and they don't they didn't behave accordingly. Now, I don't believe that humans are evil inherently. I believe all human behavior has positive intent, but I also believe that the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
Nice. There's a moment in your story around the age of 19 that you describe it as the day everything changed. Can you take us there?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to school My first semester in college, I did very poorly. I flunked out of several classes. I had a really erratic schedule because I was a freshman. I was excited to pick my own schedule. Second semester, I got my head on straight. I picked a normal schedule, Monday through Thursday, 7 to 11 a.m. I was in and out. I got straight A's that semester. I was going to join the tennis team. I was ranked number 3 on the team. And one night at about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, a giant guy. I mean, I'm not very tall. This guy must have been like 6'5". He was dressed in all black, wearing a beanie. He came and pounded on our door. And I was so startled. I was like, what the heck? Who's at our door this early? I opened the door and I was like, yes, can I help you? He's like, I'm here to take your car. I'm a repo man, basically, right? And this was the only family car we had. I was living with my mom, my brother, and my sister. And my mom came and gave him the keys and she went back to bed. And the next morning, I was still really confused. I didn't understand what was happening, but my mom sat me down and she said that, look, I'm behind the rent 3 months. Obviously, they just took our car. We don't have any money for food. I mean, we really had maybe some old meat in the freezer and that was it. And it was like really old. It wasn't edible anymore. Like we were really, really struggling. In my mind, I couldn't wrap my head around it because I think she was making $30,000, $40,000 a year. And I thought that was a lot of money and she's a single mom living in SoCal. So I didn't understand the concept of how little money that was and how much she was struggling. And that day, I quit school. I got a full-time job as a night auditor at a fancy hotel. And I started a supplement business selling weight loss shakes and supplements on the side part-time because that day I discovered that the day that I became a man was the day that others became dependent on me. My mom needed me, my brother and sister needed me, and I stepped up and I did what I needed to do to support my family. And it's my belief that when boys finally are needed in that way where others depend on them, that's the day that they become men. And that was the day that I became a man.
Well, you have said something very powerful, that a boy becomes a man the day others depend on him. And why do you believe that? And what do you think most people misunderstand about that transition today?
I think the sad part about our society, at least in Western society, we don't really have any tradition or ceremony or any indication when a boy becomes a man. I think it's for all of us, at least the men that I surround myself with, we all kind of had a similar story where it was some story similar where there was something that we needed to take care of or we needed to become responsible for, and we had ownership over it. And for me, it was my family. It wasn't family of my kids or anything like that. It was a family that I was born into. And I took it on like I was the leader of that family and I was the head of that household. And I could have easily gone off and left to college and said, you know what, not my problem. You guys figure it out. But that's not how I was raised. My mom has always been, she went through a lot. And despite going through all that, she was never a bad mother. She never treated us poorly. She always put us before everything, including finding love in her own life. And so for me, when I look at society, we just kind of are all stumbling through society. We don't really quite know how to know when am I a man or when am I a woman. Now, for girls, sometimes I'm half Mexican and my mom is the Mexican one. And in my Mexican side of my culture, we have a quinceañera, right? Or in America, we have a sweet 16. So this is supposed to mark when a girl becomes a woman, it's supposed to. But really, it's become more of a ceremony just to have a party. It isn't really indicating like you're now a woman, now be a woman, or you're now a man, be a man. Now, in Jewish culture, I know they have bat mitzvahs and bar mitzvahs. But again, I'm not in tune with that culture too much. So I don't know if they actually consider them men and women and treat them as such. And then there's a power struggle usually. I work with a lot of teenagers and I discover that when boys turn 14, 15, 16, around that age and beyond, there's a lot of power struggle with the father. And they don't even listen to the mother at all because at this point, they're like, I know you can't physically hurt me. So why would I listen to you? And so then the parents are confused. They're like, the father usually, is going to be a father. And usually if he's a masculine man, he's going to want to confront his son and kind of put him in his place. And the mother feels like she's out of control. She doesn't want her husband to beat on the kid. And she doesn't want the kid to disrespect the parents. And it's just a lot of chaos. And I think it all stems from not knowing that now I'm a man and what it means to be a man. And the reason I say that statement is that the day we become a man internally, the day that our identity shifts into a man is the day that others depend on us, is because it's the same concept as becoming a father, not becoming a dad that, gives their sperm and their seed to be able to have a baby. I'm talking about becoming a father, like actually taking ownership of your child and deciding, I'm going to help raise this kid. I'm going to mentor this kid. I'm going to love this kid. That's being a father. And so that's one moment that I would say is when a boy could become a man. But I would say that in my perspective, a boy should become a man much sooner, much earlier before becoming a father. And it has to do with taking responsibility. I know one of my friends, for him, it was the day he had to take ownership over his own car. He had to buy his own car, take care of it. So it's not necessarily just taking care of people, it can be taking care of pet, a vehicle, or something that you have ownership over that now you're like, I'm in charge of this thing and I got to make sure that it's okay. Something beyond ourselves.
Nice. Uh, so you are building yourself, learning, growing, and then something happens. You put your trust into someone who ends up betraying you. What impact did that have on you?
It impacted me terribly for the first 10 years. I hate to admit it was more like 11 years, but we'll just call it 10 years to make me feel better. I got into drinking. I got into drugs. I got into partying. I got into this wannabe Wolf of Wall Street lifestyle. It was as you know, I was into business and I started building my own call centers. And I was really lost for a really long time. Now, don't get me wrong, I made money during this period, making money and losing your soul is not a really good trade. Making money and losing your mind, making money and losing your heart is not a really good trade. And I learned that the hard way. I think Jim Carrey says something really interesting. He says, I hope that everybody gets rich and famous so that they can see that's not the thing that's going to make them happy. One of my heroes in life and business is Tony Robbins. And he says that if you have the science of achievement, but you don't have the art of fulfillment, you are a failure. You can have $1 billion, but if you don't have fulfillment, you are a failure, and arguably even worse of a failure because now you have everything that everyone wants in terms of the financial material possessions, but you don't have fulfillment, you don't have joy, you don't have happiness. You're constantly angry or depressed or anxious or fearful. What kind of life is that? It doesn't matter how much money you have. So for 10 years, I was lost. I was in a drug filled, alcohol filled, just rage and depression. I gained a ton of weight. Again, I'm not very tall. I'm only like 5'5" on a good day. And I ballooned up to 194.6 pounds at my heaviest. So I was just really just a little kind of meatball. And it really impacted me because for so long I thought I was so stupid because I allowed that to happen, and I began to put up a wall where I would not allow anybody else to make me feel that stupid ever again, to the point that I would diminish people and make them feel stupid to kind of put up this wall. But my mentor taught me something: the walls that keep out disappointment also keep out happiness. The walls that keep out disappointment also keep out love. And so I put up all these walls that was protecting me, but really it was hurting me in the long run. And so it was just a really painful, dark period in my life where I was just kind of in a stupor that I'm sure a lot of people can relate. Maybe you've been cheated on. Maybe your parent betrayed you. Maybe somebody betrayed you in your life that you really trusted them and they just did something to really hurt you. And I'm here to tell you that I understand. I get it. It's incredibly painful. And I don't blame you for some of the behaviors that manifested as a result of that pain.
So you say something that I think applies to almost everyone, that people already know what to do, but they don't do it. Why is the gap between knowing and doing so hard to close?
I think it's because of our expectations. Our expectations is basically a judgment that we have on life. And there's three really major judgments that we have: the judgments we have on life, the judgments we have on people, and the judgments we have on ourselves. So when we have expectations, and one of the expectations that people have, like they might go on a podcast like yours and get a ton of value and learn from some of these amazing people that come on here. And then they think that because I hear it, I learn the information, that's good enough. And the truth is that that is not anywhere close to being good enough. See, I've learned there's three levels of mastery. The first level is cognitive, intellectual mastery. This first level is knowing that eating fast food and junk food is bad for you. We all know that. Everybody knows that, right? Now, the second level of mastery is emotional mastery, where you feel it. You don't just know that junk food is bad. You feel it. You feel disgusted. You feel some type of way. You feel disappointed if you eat it. You have a feeling about it. It's in your nervous system. And then the third level of mastery is the highest level of mastery is physical mastery, is when you don't negotiate. You don't have to feel it. You just don't do it. You don't eat the junk food. Or you do the thing. You go to the gym without thinking. You're not negotiating like, do I really have to go? Or, oh my gosh, I really want that donut. What should I do? That negotiation, that means you're still up here. That means maybe you're starting to creep into second level. You're definitely not anywhere near third level. So the reason why we know we should be doing something or shouldn't be doing something and don't do it is because of our expectation that, oh, I know this already. I know this already. So many people, in fact, I say this all the time. The most dangerous thing you can say in the English language is, I know that already. If you knew that already, then why aren't you doing it? Because you haven't achieved that third level of mastery. And how do we get to that third level of mastery is very simple. There was a man that once said, if you tell a lie big enough, loud enough, and long enough, eventually it will be believed to be true. You know who said that?
No, I forgot.
Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler said that. And the reason why I point to that is because understand the destruction and the chaos that he created. He almost took over the world with his Nazi regime because he spun a lie over and over and over and over until the people believed it. And it wasn't just Germany. There was other fascist countries that in all countries that were believing this. So often we're Hitler to ourselves and we spin a lie over and over and over again. Now we can use this to our advantage. We can spin the truth over and over and over and over until it's stuck in our bodies so that it's part of our nervous system and we don't have to negotiate it. And you can rewire, recondition your body to believe the truth instead of any of the lies that you've been believing up until now.
What finally cracked things open for you? What changed where you went from knowing to actually living it?
So I have been guilty of everything I just said about being very intellectual and even approaching second level mastery. And again, I was still drinking. I had quit drugs a long time ago, but I was drinking for many years still. And I had essentially created a lot of damage on a team that I was leading and I was coaching because of alcohol. And my mentor, the owner of that company, he challenged me. First of all, he approached me with absolute grace and compassion. He didn't humiliate me. He didn't yell at me. He didn't belittle me. He approached me with absolute compassion and empathy. And he did at the same time hold me accountable. And he challenged me. He said, Richard, every time that something bad has happened in your life has been because of alcohol, has it not? I was like, yeah. It's like, then I have a challenge for you. I challenge you to never drink alcohol again. And I'll be honest, the first time he challenged me with that, I didn't want to give it up. You see, when we do behaviors that don't serve us, it gives us something. There's a payoff to it. And my payoff was, it's fun to drink, or I like drinking, or it helps me relieve stress. So I'll be honest. At first, I didn't want to. I didn't do it. I was not willing to do it. But that event that was so painful with harming the team that I was actually leading and coaching, it was enough emotional leverage for me to finally make an identity level shift. There's a verse in the Bible that says, when I was a child, I thought as a child, reasoned as a child, and spoke as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. I would say this is the second time that not did I become a man, because the first time was when I was 19, I had to take care of my family. But this was when I decided the kind of man that I wanted to be. And it was a selfless man, a man of service, a man of contribution. And drinking was only serving me, and it wasn't really serving me. It was helping me numb my feelings instead of serving me, but I thought it was serving me. And so that challenge from my mentor, who cared enough about me to be honest with me and to really just be tough with me and tell me, you don't get to drink anymore. This is my challenge for you. Are you willing to take on this challenge? And it was almost like a big brother fatherly love that really, I call it grace from God. I think God was speaking through him and challenging him. And then that's why that verse popped into my head at that moment, because that was what really sealed it in for me to finally be like, you know what? You get to live this. You talk about this, you know this, and it just enveloped my entire body. The cool thing is that when you make an identity level shift, things become effortless. I can be around alcohol. I can be around people that are drinking. I can be around people that try to pressure me into drinking like my friends used to try. And it's there's nothing in there that says, oh, nothing. It's gone, because it's an identity level shift. It's not discipline. It's not willpower. Those things run out. Identity level change is long lasting.
Very nice. And you use the term neural emotional reconditioning. For someone hearing that for the first time, what does that actually mean in simple terms?
Of course, if you break the three words, neural is your nervous system, emotional is just your emotions, your feelings, and conditioning is really what you are teaching yourself. So we all have unconscious teachings that we learn from our parents, from the events in our lives. If you experience a stressful situation or a fearful situation and you tend to get angry, understand that not everybody does that. Some people get fearful, some people get anxious, some people get sad or depressed. Now, whatever that emotion that you most frequently visit when you're stressed or in a really tough situation, understand that's your emotional home. And that was conditioned into you, meaning you learned that. You weren't born this way. People think, I'm just shy. I was always this shy. Or this is just how I am. That's not true. Have you ever seen a shy baby being born coming out of the womb and being like, oh my God, don't look at me? That doesn't exist. Babies learn that. They're conditioned. And often it's something as simple as, you bring your 2-year old, 3-year old kid to meet an adult, a big scary adult, like say hi. And then they hide behind you and you just say, what? Don't worry about them. They're just shy. And that right there, that label it's like a seed planted in our mind, and then it starts to grow. And then we adopt this identity that I'm shy. What neural emotional reconditioning is to recondition yourself intentionally. All of this conditioning that you've had up until now has more than likely been unintentional. And don't get me wrong, I'm not vilifying your parents. I don't think they did this on purpose or with evil intent. They did the best they could. Even if they were abusive, they did the best they could with the tools that they had at their disposal and with how they were raised. But moving forward, after hearing this podcast, you have an opportunity to intentionally recondition your nervous system to anything that you want so that you can create the life that you want.
You have made it clear that you're not interested in people spending years talking about the problems. You focus on creating real change quickly. What actually makes transformation stick at that level?
It's a nervous system level. Once we make it a nervous system level, see the thought that the reason I started off with the 3 levels of mastery saying that repetition is going to get you there is because that's something anybody can do. Anybody can do repetitions over and over and over again and get it wired into your system. The cool part is that my skill set, I can get your nervous system wired really fast. And the reason why is because I understand neuroscience and how the nervous system actually works. And here's the thing. Has there been a situation where people might have one experience that happened this fast and all of a sudden they learn to be afraid of something, like let's say they have an accident or they almost drowned or something like that, where they all of a sudden learn to be afraid of water or swimming or afraid of heights or different things like this? Understand that you learn that this fast, and if you can learn that fear this fast, you can unlearn it just as fast. The brain learns faster than it doesn't. And people think that it takes time to change. The truth is that it takes time for enough emotional leverage to occur for you to want to change. That's the truth. Because again, remember, my drinking, I was getting something from that. I don't want to drink, but I also wanted to drink. I was getting a payoff from that. And whether it's drinking or drugs or going back to somebody in a relationship that maybe you shouldn't be going back to, or anything that's not serving you, overeating, any of those behaviors, understand that you're getting something even if you want to change it. It's meeting some of your needs in some way. And if you understand that, then understand that all that's happened is you haven't gotten an emotional leverage, otherwise known as pain. You haven't gotten enough pain for you to actually want to change and really let it go. So once you get to that point, change is really easy. And understanding how our nervous system understands memories and how we record meaning inside of our nervous system is key, because people think that, kind of like your phone, you record a video on your phone and it's going to play back the same way 1,000 times every time you play it. But our memories, it doesn't record video like that. It records the things that stick out to us that created the most emotion. And if we make modifications and changes to the core memories or core beliefs that you have about yourself, then everything changes like that.
When someone truly changes at the identity level, what's different about them? How do you notice? Or what do you notice?
Behavior. At the end of the day, we'll know if transformation has occurred through behavior. I call this term, when we just learn information, the cognitive level of mastery, the first level of mastery, I call it mental masturbation. Everybody knows how to learn information. We have too much information. We don't even know what's real information anymore because of AI. They're coming out with really good videos and pictures that look real. We don't know what's real. We have too much information. But when we know there's a breakthrough in identity is behavior. And usually it starts off with little signs. We were trained by Hollywood to think that it's this big buzzer beating moment that is the thing that creates the big transformation. But it's really a series of little moments that begin to create that transformation. And so once you start to notice the little changes in your behavior, you'll be like, wait, I don't normally do that, or I don't normally feel that, or I don't normally think that. It's going to be those are the 3 signs I look at: is your beliefs, your emotions, and your behavior that are going to show indications of transformation beginning to occur. But the one thing that I would say above anything is this: is once it starts to feel effortless and automatic to do the behavior that's going to get you the result. So the moment it felt effortless for me not to drink, that's when I knew it was an identity level change. Because I've tried before to not drink and it was all willpower, and obviously that failed. So that's not an identity level change. When it feels effortless and it's not something you don't have to negotiate, that's when you know it's an identity level change.
You mentioned that a lot of people who get the biggest breakthroughs from your work are mother of teenagers. What is that? What's really going on there?
So like I said, I was volunteering for a really long time before I started my own practice and coaching and training people's psychology. And during my volunteer time, I just seemed to provide the most value to these mothers because I have a lot of expertise in terms of actual mechanical skills when it comes to fitness, when it comes to influence, when it comes to persuasion, when it comes to psychology. And all of those skills seem to benefit them the most. And also the fact that I have found my connection to my creator, my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And these women seem to be the ones that I provide the most value having that skill set, having that background, because they seem to gravitate to the information that I have and they seem to apply it and they seem to get the biggest breakthroughs because I help them with their relationship with their kids. A lot of them have preteen, teens, or even adult kids that they're struggling with, and I help them heal that relationship. A lot of them are struggling with their marriages where they feel out of control with their kids or their husbands and they just want that control, and I help them be able to discover the problems that are actually holding them back, and not only discovering the problems but solving them. And a lot of them are often struggling with their weight and their fitness because of how much lack of control they feel that they have. They're in a lot of pain, and to numb that pain often they'll use food. And so I discovered that this particular type of client and student that I've helped seems to get the most value out of anybody. Now, don't get me wrong, I've helped men, I've helped teenagers, I've helped all kinds of people, elderly people that are, trying something new at a new phase in their lives. But the people that seem to get the most value that I help in most areas of their lives are mothers of teenage children who are struggling with their marriages and a lot of times with their weight as well.
For the person listening right now, maybe they see themselves in your story, the waiting, the frustration, the feeling that they are capable of more. What's the one thing you want them to walk away with today?
Trade your expectations for appreciations. The expectations that you have on yourself, on other people, or in life. The moment that I started doing that, it relieved all of the pressure of I should be doing this, or I should be at this level, or I should be making this money, or I should be at this weight. And instead, I started focusing on what I had and what I have accomplished and the things that I can control. And the moment that I started appreciating those things is the moment that I started living in that space. I was able to create an emotional home. Remember earlier, I said most people's emotional home is anger, depression, anxiety, fear. I went from anger as my emotional home and I moved into gratitude. So trade your expectations, and even the most basic expectations that you think this is a reasonable expectation. I promise you it's a source of your suffering, because the moment we have an expectation on life, on other people, or on ourselves, really it's a judgment. And when you realize you're judging life, other people, or yourself, you'll realize that that's the source of your unhappiness and you're imprisoning yourself, and you'll never be able to break out of that fear and break through to become who you were really meant to be, or more accurately said, remember who you always were to begin with.
Richard, it has been an incredibly powerful conversation. For anyone who wants to connect with you, learn more about your work, or dive deeper into what you do, where should they go?
You can follow me on Instagram. It's at Richard Lee. That's one E, and then the letter P as in Paul, and the number 3, Richard Lee P3. I'm on Instagram. I have a Linktree link on my bio. You can check out all my social medias, and I post content regularly talking about this stuff, talking about fitness, and really trying to provide as much value as possible.
And to everyone listening, if this conversation resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on the question: where in your life are you paying with time? Where should you be investing in yourself? Because your life is happening right now, not someday. Thank you for joining us. I am Enrique Guzman-Barron, and this has been Stop Paying with Your Life. See you in the next episode. Thank you so much, Richard, for being today.
Thank you for having me, Enrique.